Chapter 4, The Colonial Era in India, Question Answers from Grade 8, Subject Social Science. The big questions. Question 1. What is colonialism? Answer. Colonialism is when one country takes control of another region and imposes its own political, economic, and cultural systems on it. The colonizers often justify it as a civilizing mission, but in reality, it means exploitation of resources, loss of independence, and destruction of native traditions. Example, the British control of India, where they collected heavy taxes, drained wealth, and reshaped Indian society for their own benefit. Question 2. What drew European powers to India? Answer. India was seen as a land of great wealth and prosperity. Main attractions: spices and textiles, highly valued in Europe, precious stones, ivory, sandalwood, teakwood, steel, woods. India's thriving agriculture, manufacturing, and trade networks. Strategic location: control of Indian ports meant access to trade routes to East and Southeast Asia. Hence, European powers competed to establish colonies and trading posts in India. Question 3. What was India's economic and geopolitical standing before and during the colonial period? Answer. Before colonial rule, India contributed about one-fourth of the world's GDP along with China. Known for rich textiles, steel, gems, spices, and flourishing trade. Described by travelers as flourishing and prosperous. During colonial rule, economy declined sharply due to deindustrialization, high taxes, and exploitation. India became a supplier of raw materials and a market for British goods. Once a global economic power, India sank into poverty and famines. Question 4. How did the British colonial domination of India impact the country? Answer. Economic impact: drain of wealth, collapse of textile and handicraft industries, frequent famines. Social impact: traditional education and governance dismantled, new English-based system created social divides. Political impact: British imposed centralized rule, annexed states using doctrine of lapse and subsidiary alliances. Cultural impact: ancient traditions weakened while British values and education spread. Result: India, once rich, became one of the poorest countries by 1947. Let's explore page 87. What do you think the cartoon figure 4.3 is trying to express? Keep in mind that the telegraph, which permitted instant communications for the first time, was then a recent invention. Analyze different elements of the drawing. Answer. The cartoon shows a British business magnate with one leg in Egypt and the other in South Africa, stretching a telegraph wire across the continent. Telegraph was a new invention that allowed instant communication across vast distances. The cartoon symbolizes Britain's imperial power and dominance over Africa, the use of technology, telegraph, railways, ships to control colonies, the spread of British influence worldwide, linking faraway lands under one empire. It reflects the idea that the British Empire was so vast that the sun never sets on it. Let us explore page 92. Before you read further, have a good look at the painting on the first page of this chapter. It was specially ordered for the London headquarters of the East India Company and is over 3 meters long. Observe every aspect of it: the people in it, the objects, the symbols, and the attitudes. Form groups of 4 or 5 students and let each group present its conclusions as regards the messages the painting conveys. Answer. The painting was made for the East India Company's headquarters in London. Key elements: Britannia, symbol of Britain, sits higher, showing superiority and power. Figures representing India and China bow down, offering wealth, pearls, jewels, cotton, precious jars. Animals and natural resources of colonies are also shown as gifts to Britain. The naval fleet and god Mercury, symbol of trade and travel, highlight Britain's commercial and military strength. Message conveyed: colonies like India and China are shown as voluntarily offering their riches. In reality, this was propaganda. Britain seized wealth by force but represented it as a willing gift. The painting glorifies British imperialism and exploitation. Let us explore page 98. Why do you think Dada Bhai Naroji means by un-British rule in India? Hint: he was an MP in the House of Commons in 1892. Answer: Dada Bhai Nauroji, who was the first Indian MP in the British House of Commons, expected British rule to follow values like justice, fairness, and good governance, which were claimed as the ideals of Britain. But in India, the British practiced exploitation, unfair taxation, and wealth drain, which were the opposite of those ideals. By calling it un-British rule, he meant that the British were not ruling India according to their own professed values of liberty and justice. Instead, they treated India with oppression and greed. Think about it, page 98. Let us return to this painting, figure 4.14, but now with some clues to its symbolism. Note how Britannia, a symbolic figure for Britain, sits higher than the colonies, pointing to her superior power. Contrast with the lower position and bent posture of the colonies. Did they really offer their wealth, or did Britain seize it by force or ruse? Note also the Indians' dark complexion in contrast with that of Britannia, reflecting the belief in the superiority of white people over the dark-skinned natives. Answer: so friends, this is the figure 4.14. Britannia sits higher than the colonies, showing superior power. Colonies like India and China are shown in a lower position, bowing and offering wealth, pearls, cotton, jars, animals. So friends, this is China offering a precious jar, and this is India offering pearls and jewels. In reality, Britain did not receive wealth as gifts. It was taken by force, deception, and unfair trade policies. The dark skin of Indians versus the fair Britannia reflects the colonial belief in racial superiority of white Europeans. So friends, as you can see, these people look white and India, China dark skin. The painting was a form of propaganda glorifying British imperialism as if it were natural and beneficial, while hiding exploitation. Let's explore page 100. Do you understand all the terms used above to list and describe Indian textiles? If not, form groups of 4 or 5 and try to find out more. Then compare your findings with the help of your teacher. Answer: some important textile terms: muslin, a fine, very light cotton cloth; silk, smooth fabric made from silkworm threads; wool, fabric from sheep or goat hair; jute, strong fiber used to make ropes, sacks, mats; hemp, coarse fiber from the hemp plant used for ropes and canvas; coir, fiber from coconut husk used for mats and ropes; embossed fabric, cloth with raised decorative designs. These were India's world famous textiles that were later destroyed by British policies. Think about it, page 102. What exactly did Macaulay mean when he wrote that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia? And why should he want to make Indians English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect? How does this relate to the civilizing mission mentioned at the start of the chapter? Ask your teacher to guide a class debate on these questions. Answer: Macaulay believed European knowledge was superior to Indian or Arabic learning. He dismissed centuries of Indian wisdom in subjects like astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. His aim was to create a class of Indians loyal to British values who would act as clerks, teachers, and minor officials to help the colonial administration. This directly relates to the so-called civilizing mission. The British claimed they were uplifting Indians but in reality they were erasing Indian traditions and replacing them with European culture to strengthen their control. Think about it, page 104. What is meant by the sun never sets on the British Empire? Do you think this was a correct statement? Answer. The phrase means that the British Empire was so vast across Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas that in at least one part of the empire it was always daytime. It symbolized the global reach and dominance of Britain. At its peak in the 19th century, the statement was correct because Britain ruled territories on every continent. However, the statement also reflected arrogance, ignoring the misery and exploitation faced by the colonized people. Let's explore page 105. Examine the map. What are the main differences with the map of today's India in terms both of borders and of names? Answer. So friends, this is the map. Borders. The 1909 map includes present-day Pakistan, Bangladesh and Myanmar as part of British India. Present-day India is much smaller after the partition of 1947 and the later separation of Myanmar 1937. Names. Many cities had colonial names: Bombay, now Mumbai; Calcutta, now Kolkata; Madras, now Chennai. Large regions were called presidencies or provinces rather than states. Princely states. Over 500 princely states existed then, shown in yellow on the map. Today, these have merged into the Indian Union. Let's explore page 107. Note how the Santhals are depicted in the 1856 sketch, figure 4.17, drawn from an artist's imagination. Observe their complexion, dress, weapons, and draw your conclusions as regards the image this depiction would create in the popular mind in Britain. Answer. So friends, this is the figure 4.17, an 1856 sketch in the Illustrated London News depicting an unequal confrontation between Santhal rebels and gun-wielding sepoys. In the sketch, the Santhals are shown with dark complexion, simple tribal dress and primitive weapons like bows and spears. They appear barefoot and unorganized, while the British sepoys are drawn with uniforms, guns and discipline. This contrast created the impression in Britain that the Santhals were savage, backward and powerless compared to the civilized and modern colonial forces. The depiction justified British rule by showing the rebels as inferior and doomed to lose, even though in reality the Santhals fought bravely and with great courage. Let's explore page 108. Indigo is a natural deep blue pigment used in dyeing. Can you think of other natural substances that have been traditionally used in India to dye cloth? Answer. Yes, India has a long tradition of natural dyes including turmeric, bright yellow; henna, mehndi leaves, reddish brown; madder root, manjista, deep red; pomegranate rind, yellow to green; saffron, golden orange; indigo, blue; lark, from insects, crimson red; onion peels and neem leaves, earthy tones. Next, why do you think was the term Sepoy Mutiny rejected after Indian independence? Write one paragraph explaining your reasons. Answer. The term Sepoy Mutiny was rejected because it reduced the Great Uprising of 1857 to a small army revolt, ignoring its wider participation and importance. After independence, historians recognized that the rebellion was not just a mutiny of sepoys, but a mass movement involving peasants, rulers, tribal groups, and common people across large parts of India. It was the first major struggle for India's freedom, so terms like Great Rebellion of 1857 or First War of Independence are considered more accurate and respectful. Let's explore page 112. In the sentence, it opened or reopened India to the world and the world to India. Why do you think we added reopened? Answer. India had long been connected to the world through trade, culture, and knowledge exchanges with Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Chinese. During colonialism, these connections were disrupted or reshaped under British control. So, colonialism did not open India for the first time, it reopened old connections but in a new exploitative way. Next, some argue that stolen cultural heritage has been better preserved abroad than it would have been in India. What is your view on its repatriation? Discuss in groups. Answer. For repatriation, these artifacts are part of India's identity, history, and pride. They were taken without consent, so keeping them abroad continues the injustice. India now has modern museums and conservation facilities to preserve them. Against repatriation, common argument. Some say they might have been destroyed if left in India due to neglect or conflict. My view, artifacts belong to the land and people they came from. Even if preserved abroad, they are part of India's cultural soul and should be returned so that Indians can access and honor their heritage in their own country. Next, questions and activities. Question 1. What is colonialism? Give 3 different definitions based on the chapter or on your knowledge. Answer. Political definition. Colonialism is when a foreign power captures and rules another country, controls its government, laws, and army, and limits the people's freedom. Economic definition. Colonialism is a system where the ruler extracts resources, taxes, and profits from the colony, turns it into a market for its own goods, and blocks local industries. Cultural ideological definition. Colonialism spreads the colonizer's language, education, and values while belittling local traditions to make people accept foreign rule as natural. Question 2. Colonial rulers often claimed that their mission was to civilize the people they ruled. Based on the evidence in this chapter, do you think this was true in the case of India? Why or why not? Answer. No. Evidence of exploitation, heavy land taxes, forced cash crops like indigo, famines, and deindustrialization of Indian textiles. Racial hierarchy, laws, images, and attitudes placed Europeans as superior, Indians as natives. Education policy. Macaulay pushed English education to create clerks loyal to the Raj, not to empower all Indians. Infrastructure motive. Railways, telegraph mainly moved troops and exports, not to develop Indian welfare. Conclusion. The civilizing mission was a justification. The real aim was power and profit. Any benefits were incidental and designed to serve the empire first. Question 3. How was the British approach to colonizing India different from earlier European powers like the Portuguese or the French? Answer. Scale and method. The British East India Company built a large private army, collected revenue after 1765 in Bengal, and governed vast territories. Portuguese, French mostly held trading posts. The French lost big after the Carnatic Wars. Political tools. British used subsidiary alliances and doctrine of lapse to annex states. Others rarely imposed such systematic political control. Administration. The British created a centralized bureaucracy, courts, police, and overhauled land revenue systems, much deeper penetration than earlier Europeans. Longevity and outcome. Britain became the dominant territorial ruler, others remained secondary traders or lost influence. Question 4. Indians funded their own subjugation. What does this mean in the context of British infrastructure projects in India like the railway and telegraph networks? Answer. Who paid? Indian taxpayers financed railway guarantees, land acquisition, salaries, and operations. Who benefited first? The network mainly moved British goods from ports inland and troops to crush revolts quickly. Result: infrastructure that looked modern actually tightened imperial control and drained wealth while Indians bore the cost? Question 5. What does the phrase divide and rule mean? Give examples of how this was used by the British in India. Answer. Meaning, a strategy to keep rivals apart so they cannot unite against the ruler by favoring one side, stoking rivalries or changing rules. In India, backing Mir Jafar against Sirajud-Dowla at Plassey 1757, subsidiary alliances that set princes against each other and made them dependent, interfering in succession disputes, playing courts, factions of each other, later separate political categories that hardened community divisions. Question 6. Choose one area of Indian life such as agriculture, education, trade, or village life. How was it affected by colonial rule? Can you find any signs of those changes still with us today? Express your ideas through a short essay, a poem, a drawing, or a painting. Option A. Education, short essay. British policies replaced pathshalas, madrasas, gurukuls with English medium schools aimed at producing clerks for the Raj. Macaulay argued European books were superior, which devalued Indian knowledge, while literacy in English created a new middle class who later led nationalism. The system narrowed access and privileged English. Traces today, English remains a high status language. Many exams, jobs reward English proficiency, and Western syllabi shapes part of higher education. Option B. Agriculture, short essay. Land settlements demanded cash taxes, pushing peasants to grow cash crops, indigo, opium, cotton. This reduced food crops, contributing to famines. Moneylenders and planters gained power, peasants fell into debt. Traces today, cash crop belts, dependence on global prices, and continuing farmer indebtedness in some regions reflect that legacy. Question 7. Imagine you are a reporter in 1857. Write a brief news report on Rani Lakshmibai's resistance at Jhansi. Include a timeline or storyboard showing how the rebellion began, spread, and ended, highlighting key events and leaders. Answer. Headline. Jhansi's queen leads daring defense. Banner of revolts flies high. Dateline Jhansi, June 1858. Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi has emerged as the fiercest face of the current uprising. After disputes over succession under the doctrine of lapse, the Rani fortified Jhansi and organized men and women into fighting units. When besieged, she broke through enemy lines, later joining forces with Tatia Top. In a bold move, rebels entered Gwalior and raised the flag of freedom. British counterattacks followed swiftly. Eyewitnesses report the Rani fought on horseback until her final breath, refusing surrender. Though the city has fallen, her courage has ignited hope far beyond Bundelkhand. Storyboard timeline key beats. May 1857 uprising begins at Meerut, spreads to Delhi. Late 1857 Jhansi prepares. Rani organizes defense. Early 1858 siege of Jhansi, fierce resistance. June 1858 breakout from Jhansi, joins Tatia Top. June 1858 capture of Gwalior by rebels. June 17, 1858 Rani Lakshmibai falls in battle near Kota Ki Sarai. British retake Gwalior. Question 8. Imagine an alternate history where India was never colonized by European powers. Write a short story of about 300 words exploring how India might have developed on its own path. Answer. Monsoon of machines. By the 1850s, India's guilds had forged alliances with scholars from Calcutta to Thanjavur. Without foreign conquest, the Grand Assembly in Varanasi set out a simple plan: marry craft to science. Wood's steel makers shared secrets with instrument makers from Jaipur's observatories. Weavers of Dhaka met Cochin's spice traders to fund a public Bharatiya College of Engineering. Rail lines designed by local mathematicians stitched together cotton fields and granaries, built to move grain before armies. Famines faded as canal boards, elected by village councils, redirecting water like surgeons redirecting blood. In Bombay, an Indian nautical service mapped the coast. In Madras, Sanskrit and Persian scholars co-taught with mathematicians from Pune, printing bilingual textbooks. By 1900, steam engines bearing lotuses on their plates ran on coal from Raniganj and windmills along Kutch's coast. The first People's Exhibition of Inventions opened in Allahabad, a pedal loom that matched the speed of Manchester's powered loom, but without breaking the weaver's back. Politics evolved, often noisily. The Confederation of Bharatiya Provinces argued over tariffs but agreed on one law: no charter may enrich a few by starving a village. By 1930, the Deccan Battery, cheap storage built from monsoon river salts, lit homes from Sylhet to Sindh. Children learned in 3 languages: mother tongue, Sanskrit, Persian classics, and a global lingua franca. When the first aeroplane rose from a field near Kanpur, farmers looked up without fear. It carried not soldiers but seeds dropped ahead of the rains to green the dry earth. The pilot circled once and tipped his wings as if saluting a country that had chosen knowledge over conquest, and the monsoon on cue applauded. Question 9. Role play. Enact a historical discussion between a British official and an Indian personality like Dadabhai Nauroji on the British colonial rule in India. Answer. Official. Our rule has brought railways, law and order. Surely India prospers. Nauroji. Prosperity cannot be claimed while wealth flows out and people starve. Indians pay taxes, profits, salaries, and purchases go home to England. Official. But trade is free and fair. Nauroji. Free for whom? Indian textiles were taxed and throttled. British goods favored. A fair trade would not kill artisans. Official. Education has uplifted India. Nauroji. Education should serve Indians, not just the empire. We need schools in our languages, scientific training and self-government. Official. Empire ensures unity. Nauroji. True unity comes from liberty and justice. Rule India by the principles you claim at home, or admit this is un-British rule. Question 10. Explore a local resistance movement, tribal, peasant or princely, from your state or region during the colonial period. Prepare a report or poster describing what was the specific trigger, if any, who led the movement, what were their demands, how did the British respond, how is this event remembered today. Example: local festivals, songs, monuments. Answer: Santhal Rebellion, Hull, 1855 to 56. Region: present day Jharkhand, West Bengal. Rajmahal Hills. Trigger: oppression by zamindars, moneylenders, and new police revenue systems, loss of land and forest. Leaders: Sidhu, Kanu, Chand, Bhairav, Santhal brothers, supported by Santhal villages. Demands: end of exploitative taxes, loans, right to land and self-governance. Methods: mass village mobilization, attacks on oppressive outposts. British response: martial law, severe suppression using firearms. Outcome: impact: revolt crushed, but it sparked later tribal and peasant resistances, highlighted injustice of colonial systems. Remembered: Hull Divas, 30th June, statues and local songs honoring the martyrs. Folk line idea: Hull का नाद सुनो, जंगल जमीन हमारी है. Hear the call of Hull, the forest and land are ours. So friends, we have completed all the question answers from chapter 4, the colonial era in India. We have already studied the short notes and summary of this chapter. You can find the link in the description and on the screen. If you like the video, kindly like, hype the video and share it with your friends. Also subscribe to my channel for more such videos. We will meet in the next video. Thank you for watching.